All right, welcome. Yeah, that's a pretty fun video, right? Hey, welcome so much. So glad you're here. Welcome to Vintage. My name is Jay. If we've never met before, I got the awesome privilege of overseeing Vintage. Grateful to do that. Obviously, I do that with a number of people, a number of volunteers, a couple of staff people as well. One of those includes our speaker tonight. He's closing out our Spotlight series, and I'm just grateful for him. He stepped in at the beginning of this school year as our intern, and he's wrapping that up now, so he's finishing up, so we're going to miss him, but excited for what God has for him. He's going to spend the summer both working down at Circle C, and also he is the youth pastor at Cornerstone Church, which is located on Grand Island. He accepted that position earlier this year, so he'll be doing that, and next year he'll be leading their youth group in terms of middle school and high school. So glad, personally, so grateful to have him. He was my first ever intern, so he showed me a lot of grace. But just excited for him. So would you please give a warm welcome to Colton as he shares what God put on his heart tonight. Would you please welcome him?
All right. Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? How's everybody doing? All right, good. A couple people are doing well. Good to hear. Good to hear. Hey, like Jay said, my name is Colton. I've had the privilege of being the intern here at Vintage this year. It seems like just a couple weeks ago, it was a whole year ago, though, that I was talking to Jay about the possibility of being an intern here and serving here at the chapel. And the fact that I had that opportunity and it's flown by this fast has just been amazing. So if I could sell the intern program to you at all. Jay's been wonderful. He's been a great mentor for me and the entire student ministry staff. The opportunities that I've had to work with them and just be mentored by them, I would definitely say this is one of the strongest periods in my life of just spiritual growth just this season that I've been in this intern program. So if that is not a good enough sell for you and you're not considering the intern program or applying for it after this, I don't know what is. But it was just a really, really great experience. I'm just beyond grateful for this opportunity just to share with you guys what God has put on my heart tonight. So just glad to be here. So thank you guys so much for giving me this opportunity. But tonight, I just want to give you guys an opportunity to get to know me better. So I want to share a story with you guys, and this story does, in fact, tie in with what I want to speak about. And so tonight, I want to share with you a story about a time that I was pursuing glory in my life. And so we're going to go all the way back to my childhood when I was a very, very young person. I grew up loving the sport of football. Is there anybody else in here that loves football? Any passionate football fans? I would imagine there's some. Okay, great. Good. So all throughout my life, football was like my main priority as a child. And basically, it started at a young age, and I was a fan of a wonderful team. And I'm sure you guys are very familiar with them. They're the best team in the area. I'm sure all you guys are big fans of a wonderful hometown team. That's right. If you guys want to say it with me, you can. The Indianapolis Colts. Yes, not the Buffalo Bills. No, I actually liked a good team when I was a child. I rooted for a good team. And they won a lot, and it was great. But I will admit, when they lost, I would cry. And I just started to get over that last year when they lost. So I don't cry anymore when they lose. I'm just kidding. But I did take it very seriously. And then also, when I was a child, I would play football just about every day. I would beg either my brother Scott or my dad to go outside and throw football passes with me because that is what I was passionate about. I wanted to make a career out of it. I wanted to be an NFL superstar. And as you can tell by my wonderful size, I definitely had the build for it. But I took it seriously. It was my life, and I poured everything into it. But as I became a freshman in high school, I quickly realized, as I made a joke about my size, when I was a 5'5" freshman weighing 99 pounds and had not gone through puberty yet, I realized that my dream to be an NFL superstar wasn't going to work out. There's no way it's going to work out for me. And so I kind of gave gave up on that dream, but football was still definitely the top priority in my life. That was the thing that I poured all my energy, my effort into. That was the only thing I really cared about in high school and really cared about doing well and excelling in. So, with all that being said, I want to take you guys to my last year of playing football. I was a senior in high school, and we were playing a school called Harrisonburg High School. Now, our football team my senior year was possibly the worst team in all of the history of any high school sport. Like, we were atrocious. Now, we did win one game, and it was great, but other than that, we lost about every game. But this game specifically, when we were playing Harrisonburg High School, our team was actually up. We were ahead, and so it was a great moment because we were in the lead, and we didn't really know how to handle ourselves in that kind of a situation because that's just unheard of for us. And so we're in the lead, and we're doing great, and we're really close to halftime, and we're up by a touchdown. And we also, at this time, have an opportunity to score another touchdown, which would put us up by 2 scores, which would have been really incredible for us. We would have been just ecstatic. And so we have the ball close to the end zone, close to halftime, and our coach calls a play. So our quarterback, he comes in, we're all wrapped around in the huddle, and the quarterback comes in, he's ready to call this play, and I'm already ecstatic because the moment he calls the play, I recognize that this is a play that's going to come to me, and so this is my opportunity to receive the glory that I've wanted because this is a pass play that's designed to me, and I have an opportunity to score a touchdown. But what I noticed in this moment is when the quarterback brought the play in, something wasn't quite right. And so there was 2 things that could have happened. Either one, the coach actually called the play the other way, which I didn't think was very likely. What I thought was more likely was the fact that our quarterback probably called the wrong play because we were just all out of sorts and we had no idea what we were doing. And so I assumed that was the direction we were taking. And so our quarterback calls the play, and I'm like, this definitely isn't right. I'm going to do the opposite of what he said because I think he called this incorrectly. And so I go with my gut and I do the wrong thing, and it ends up working out wonderfully for me. I end up running this route. I turn around, and the moment I turn around, I see the ball in the air, and I have an opportunity to catch it. Luckily enough, I made the catch, and I scored a touchdown, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. So I remember laying down and just standing up and hearing cheers. It was a wonderful moment. I look in the stands, and I see my parents cheering. I see all my friends and people that I go to school with cheering for me. All my teammates are excited. They're jumping up and down and picking me up and things. I'm like, this is the best. This is my moment of glory. This is what I've pursued my entire life. I've played football my entire childhood, and these are the moments that I have been living for. This is the glory that I have been pursuing, and this is going to be the best moment ever. And so I'm feeling great, and I'm walking over to the huddle, right? Or not the huddle, sorry, my mistake. I'm walking over to the sideline to talk to our coach, and I'm like, all right, let's see what he has to say now that I did this wonderful thing, right? And I'm just ready to go. And I get there, and I get up in front of my coach, and he just starts ripping me a new one. He just starts laying into me. I'm like I had no idea what to do. I was straight up just caught off guard because he was mad at me because shockingly enough, I was wrong. Our quarterback actually called the right play. We both just did the wrong thing. And so I got in trouble, and it just left me in this moment feeling so unfulfilled. It was this moment that I had been waiting for my entire life. I was I finally have received this glory. And then I'm in that moment, I'm this is not near as fulfilling as I thought. I thought this was going to be the best thing ever. And here I am feeling empty on the inside after this moment that I've chased my entire life for. And it leads me to this question I want to ask you guys. Have you ever had a moment like that in your life where you have pursued something, where you've pursued glory, you want recognition, you want to be noticed for something, and then the next thing you know, it doesn't really measure up to what you believed it was going to? Maybe for you, it's in school, right? I know a lot of you guys just finished your semesters. Congratulations to anybody that graduated, by the way. You guys are amazing. But maybe you just finished your semester, right? And you did wonderful on exam. You studied, and you're you were studying as hard as you could, and you balled out, and you got an amazing grade, right? Let's pretend that you got an A in this situation. And you get an A, and you're this is amazing. I'm about to go show all my friends how smart I am. And you're ready to go and show your friends how wonderful you did. And then your friend's yo, I got an A plus on my exam. And it's oh, okay. And so you don't receive the recognition that you thought you were going to receive. You're oh man, I thought this was my moment. And you don't receive the glory there. Or maybe you're pursuing something at work, right? You're pursuing some kind of promotion, and you finally get it, and you're oh, this is amazing. I finally got the promotion I've always wanted, but it's really not as glorious as you thought because now that you have the promotion, you don't have time to do anything else with the rest of your life. You have to work all the time and you're never free, and it's this really isn't what I thought it was going to be. Or maybe for you, it's a relationship, right? Maybe you've been pursuing that guy or that girl for the longest time, and you're oh man, if I can just date them, if I can just go on one date, this is going to be the best date of my life. It's going to be the most wonderful thing in the world. And you finally get that opportunity, and you go on that date, and then you're oh, that's it? That's all? They made me pay for my meal. If you're a girl, hopefully, guys, if you take a girl out, you better pay for them, okay? But anyways, all right? And you get to these moments and you expect them to be these wonderful things, these moments where you're going to feel glorious and you're going to have all this glory that you've sought out, and it just doesn't measure up. It just doesn't fill up to what you thought it was going to be for you. But there's another glory that we can seek after, that we can all pursue, that is more fulfilling, that is better, that is more life-giving, and it's something that's beyond ourselves. And that is the glory of God, pursuing Jesus' glory. And in pursuing his glory, we can find the best story for our life. And so in saying that tonight, we're going to be spending our time in John chapter 4, verses 43 through 54. It's the story of Jesus healing the nobleman's son. He's healing the official's son. But before we dive into the story, I think it's important that we understand some of the characters that we're going to be evaluating in this story. And so there's this group of people. Jesus is going to mention early on in this story that a prophet has no honor in his hometown or in his home country. And so we're going to look at this group of people, and what we're going to call them is the hometown boys, all right? The hometown boys are the people that don't honor Jesus, the people that are not honoring him in his home country. And the reason it's important that we look at these guys and we understand them before we dive into this story is because I believe through some studying that I did this week, some other scholars helped lead me to this belief that these hometown boys that we're going to be talking about, they possess a lot of the same inner sin that prevent us from seeing the glory of Jesus that we possess sometimes, or that we carry with ourselves. And so we're going to look at what those three things are, what those three inner sins that the homeboys or the hometown boys struggle with. And so the first one is a sense of entitlement. The hometown boys had a sense of entitlement. So these are things that we should not be doing, right? Once again, just to remind you, these are three examples of things we should not be doing that are making us miss out on the glory of Jesus. And so they had a sense of entitlement. And so what I mean by this, for these hometown boys, Jesus says a prophet has no honor in his home country because he grew up with these people. These hometown boys, they know who Jesus is. They have spent time with him. They've watched him all the way up through birth to an adult. And so since they've known him, they're like, oh, I know Jesus. I went to maybe third grade class with him, or I was in school with him, or I spent time with him. And because I know Jesus, because we grew up together, I'm entitled to something. I have special dibs, or maybe I have first dibs on some kind of blessing that Jesus can give me. I receive first dibs because I am entitled to that because I know Jesus. And I think if you look in our relationships with Christ, sometimes when we're following him, that's something that a lot of us as followers of Christ struggle with as well. Sometimes for us, it can be the exact same thing. We have this relationship with Jesus and we choose to follow him. And even if we're following faithfully and we're pouring into him, we're spending time in the Word and we're doing all these things, sometimes we feel a little bit entitled. We feel like, all right, God, like, when am I going to get mine? Like, when is it my turn? And it can even add up more when we see people around us and the lives that they're living. Maybe it's someone who doesn't profess to be a follower of Christ, or someone who maybe you believe doesn't follow Christ as closely as you do. And because of that, you see something good happen for them. You see them get blessed in some way, or God give them something that you don't think they deserve. And it's like, all right, God, like, I'm following you closer than they are. Like, I'm definitely like being a more faithful servant than they are. Like, where's mine? Like, when am I going to get mine? Like, I'm a Christian. Like, this is my time for special dibs. Like, I deserve this, Jesus. So like, I'm ready to get mine whenever you're ready to send it my way. And so we have this sense of entitlement with our relationship with Jesus. Just like the hometown boys, they had a sense of entitlement. I believe another thing that they possessed was an over-familiarity with who Jesus was. They were a little over-familiar with who Jesus was. What I mean by this is, since they had spent so much time with him, since they had seen him at work and seen the things that he did, they believed that there wasn't really anything that Jesus could do that was going to surprise them at this point. They thought, I've seen it all. I've seen Jesus walk on water. Whatever it is that they've experienced Jesus do in their time, they're like, I've seen it all, and so nothing else that Jesus does is really going to shock me at this point. And I think we can do the same thing as well. So often we put God in a box, is a good way to put it, and we kind of just let God work where we want him to work, and we don't really give him a lot of room to work outside of that. I know when I was looking at these points and studying them and just kind of researching them, I feel like this is me the most. I feel like this is the thing of these three that I struggle with the most in my life, is so often I get caught up praying for the same things and seeking the same things from Jesus, and because of that, I'm just limiting myself as to what God can really do in my life. And it's sad because we have even more evidence in the Bible than these hometown boys have, right? We have the entire story of Jesus. We have even stories outside of that, of the miracles that God has done in and through other people. And we know what he's capable, but so often we don't have the faith to take that next step and really let him work in our lives where he needs to be working or where he needs to be moving in us. And so the hometown boys in us, right? We sometimes have a sense of entitlement. Sometimes we have an over-familiarity with Jesus. And then the last one is they had a pride of attachment to someone special, being Jesus. And so what I mean by this for them is they had this pride of attachment. It was, once again, I knew Jesus, and because of the way Jesus is working, what Jesus is doing, whenever he would do something, it kind of fed their ego. It was kind of like, oh, like, I grew up with him, and like he can do that, and like, I know him, like, and because of that, like, it kind of boosts them up. It makes them feel good about themselves because they know someone who's done something worthy of note. And so when I talk about this point, what I'm thinking of is maybe a pride of attachment to something special instead of someone special. The best way that I can think of to illustrate this is kind of the world that I grew up in. And so if you're not familiar, I grew up in Virginia. And in Virginia, we live what would be technically called the Bible Belt is where we lived, is what it was technically called. And what I mean by that is basically everybody in the South, they went to church on Sundays. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of life you lived outside of that. Like, you were at church on Sundays. Like, you could go party hard on Saturday night and get like as trash as you wanted to, but on Sunday mornings, you were going to be at church. And so when we talk about this, it's kind of that pride of attachment to something special. The people that I lived with, even myself when I was in high school, this was me as well. I would go to church on Sundays, and that was kind of like, all right, like I did my Christian deed for the week. Like, I heard a little bit about Jesus. I'm good. I can tell people I'm a Christian. I can tell people that I'm following Jesus, and that's all I need to do. Maybe for you guys, it's coming to Vintage on a Tuesday night. It's like, all right, I checked that box, and like, I'm good. I've done my Christian duty for the week. Like, that's all I needed to fill me up, and I'm good. But now hear me out on this, because I'm not saying that these are bad things. Obviously, going to church on Sunday is a great thing. Coming to Vintage on a Tuesday night is a wonderful thing. These are great things, but these should not be the supplement, the top source of our relationship with Jesus. Our top source should be our own personal time that we're spending into him, pouring into our relationship with him, whether it's in the Bible, whether it's in prayer, and then these other things, coming to church on Sunday, being a part of it, that kind of stuff is the thing that enhances that relationship, that helps us grow in that relationship. But we see these hometown boys, and maybe it's us. I think these are the things that prevented them from experiencing the true glory of Jesus so many times. So it was that sense of entitlement, the overfamiliarity with Jesus, and the pride of attachment. But now that we understand a little bit of background as to why we believe the hometown boys were the way that they are, let's jump into this story. And so if you would like I think it'll be on the screen, and you can just read along with me. And so it says, after 2 days, he left for Galilee, talking about Jesus. And it says, now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet had no honor in his home country. And so we already have a background on the hometown boys. We know who they are, and Jesus is mentioning it right here, that he has no honor in his home country, and we believe we know why the hometown boys were the way that they are. And so it says, when he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. And it said, once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. Now I'm just going to stop there real quick, because now we're being introduced to a character that we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on, and that is the nobleman. That is the royal official in this son. And so we meet this guy whose son is sick, and he's laying sick in a town called Capernaum. And so let's just read about what happens to him. And so it says in verse 47, when this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went with him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. And Jesus says, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. And the royal official, he says, and he begs once again, sir, come down before my child dies. And Jesus replies, go, your son will live. And the man took Jesus at his word and departed. And while he was still on his way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. And when he inquired and asked as to the time as when his son got better, they said to him, yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him. And then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. And this was the second sign that Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. And so we've met the nobleman now, and we've seen exactly who he is and what he's done. And so just to give you a little reference, to give you guys a better idea as to what the nobleman would have looked like back in those times, he was basically living the American dream of Jesus' time. If I could compare him to anyone, and please just hear me out on this because I know this is going to ruffle a couple feathers after talking about football, but he's kind of like the Tom Brady of his day in a lot of ways, right? Tom Brady's, I mean, let's be honest, like I know most of you guys are Bills fans, but the guy kind of has it all, like in terms of American status. Like he has all the followers on social media. He's opening up his own clothing brand. He has 6 Super Bowl rings. He has a model for a wife. He has a family. They did a TV show about him. He, in some people's eyes, is a very handsome man. I'm not going to comment on that. I'll let you make that decision. But he has it all. Everybody loves, well, not everybody loves the guy, but he has it all. He has everything he could ever want. He's living the American dream, basically, here and now. And the nobleman is kind of like Tom Brady in his time. He has it all. He has all the cattle he could want, right? He's married, he has kids, he has the wealth, he has the status. He is the man in his time. He's got everything he could ever want, right? But for some reason, in this story, we see that none of that was enough. None of that mattered when it came to his son being sick. He had everything he could have ever desired. He had all the glory he could have ever wanted. But none of that mattered when the time came that his son was sick. And so we see him, he's in this town called Capernaum. If you're not familiar with where he was in reference to Jesus at this time, he hears that Jesus is in Galilee and Capernaum is about a day's walk away. And so this man is willing to leave everything that he has, to leave his son who is on his deathbed, who is dying, to go and potentially find Jesus, to beg of him to heal his son. Because the old man, he had the best story that he could ever dream of, right? He had everything he could have ever wanted. But it wasn't enough. He wanted to experience Jesus' glory because he knew that was all that could save his son at this time. And so he goes and he finds Jesus. And it leads us to this thought of what the nobleman did. And we find out that he had found his best story when he experienced God's glory. And so it leads us to this point of the night. Our best story is to desire God's glory. I'm going to say that one more time for everyone. Our best story is to desire God's glory. And so we see this and we read about the nobleman, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, oh, that's great for a guy that lived 2,000 years ago. Like, good for him. Like, wonderful, right? You know, why does this matter to us? Like, why is this important? Like, does it matter to us at all? It does. Because just like the nobleman, he had everything, right? For us, we can pursue whatever we want. We can pursue a promotion at work. We can pursue whatever it is that we're looking for in our jobs to move up the ladder, to become the next CEO, but that's not going to fill us up. We can pursue those relationships. We can pursue those friendships. We can try to date whoever it is we're pursuing, but that's not going to be the thing in the end that fills us up. We can pursue the best grades in school and, graduating with honors or whatever you graduate with. I haven't graduated yet, so I wouldn't know. But we can pursue that and get the job that we wanted, but it's still going to leave us feeling empty. Just like the old man, he was still empty. He didn't have what he needed to save his son in this moment, and it left him feeling empty, and we can be the exact same way. But I believe that we can experience our best story in God's glory. We can experience our best story if we recognize that sometimes we're all like the hometown boys, right? We can be a little bit like them. We can struggle with that sense of entitlement. We can struggle with that over-familiarity of who Jesus is and what we believe he can do in our lives. We can struggle with that pride of attachment to whatever it may be in our lives. We can struggle with that. Or our story isn't going to be our best story if we're pursuing those things that we talked about. It's not going to be our best story if we're pursuing material things and things of the world. That's not going to lead to our best story, but our best story is going to lead to what the nobleman experienced. And if I can just reference verse 53 again, I'm going to read it. And it says, "The father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, 'Your son will live.' And so he and his whole household believed." And so we see, right, the nobleman, he comes back after his son has been healed. He comes back And what is he talking about? Is he talking about his wealth? Is he talking about any of those things? No, he's telling his family about Jesus. He's telling his family about what he experienced. He saw this man, Jesus, who worked across space and time, right? Jesus had never met this boy. Jesus had never even seen this man's son. And yet Jesus had the power in that moment just to say, go, your son will live. And like that, his son was immediately healed. We see it when he meets up with his servants. They said he recognized the moment at which Jesus spoke, his son was healed. And so this man, he goes home and he's telling the story of what he experienced from God's glory. He's not telling the story about his wealth or anything like that, but he's telling the story about what he has experienced with God's glory and what that has done for him in his life and how that has changed him within his life. And so as we kind of wrap this up, as we come to end, here is my hope for you and for me, is when you come up from that football field, when you come up from making that play and you see everyone in the stands and you come back and maybe you have that moment and you realize, hey, this is kind of leaving me empty. This is kind of leaving me in a place where, I really don't feel like, this is really measuring up to what I thought it was going to be. This isn't fulfilling me. My hope for you is that you can recognize that you have a better story if you choose to put your faith and your hope in Jesus Christ. If you choose to follow him, you can have a better story in your life. And I can speak from experience. I am fully confident in saying the glory that I received any time that I scored a touchdown in football is nowhere near the experience that I had when I put my faith and my hope and my trust in following Jesus Christ. Because when I put my hope and my trust in him, I experienced something, and it was from Jesus that I would never have experienced in any other way, in any other shape, or in any other form. And that's because our best story is truly in God's glory. If you would, please bow your heads with me in prayer. Father God, we just thank you for this time, Jesus. We just thank you for the opportunity that we have to recognize that each and every one of us has a story, Lord. We have an opportunity to come to you, to just come to your feet, Jesus, and understand that we can experience your glory if we choose to put our faith and our hope and our trust in you, Lord. It's so easy to get caught up in other things of the world, to get up in pursuing glory and wealth and fame and riches and whatever it may be, Jesus. But for us to understand that we have an opportunity, we have just a hope in you, God. We can just put our faith and our trust in that, Lord. And so we're beyond thankful for everything that you're doing, Lord. I pray that this is something that we don't just carry with us tonight when we leave Vintage, but we can carry it with us through the rest of our life and understand that you are working in our lives. You are creating a story in each and every one of us, Jesus.
Thanks for watching this episode of Vintage. If God spoke to you through this talk, please click on the button titled, How Do I Follow Jesus, on our website, and feel free to contact us and let us know what God is doing in your life. Thanks again for watching.